On my wedding day, my mother-in-law announced that her son deserved better. Some wounds cut so deep that even your happiest moments bleed. Those words echoed in my mind as I stood frozen in my wedding dress, mascara streaming down my cheeks like black rivers of betrayal. My name is Ophelia, and this is the story of how my wedding day became both my nightmare and my liberation. The morning of June 15th started like a fairy tale. Golden sunlight filtered through the bridal suite at Grandview Manor, casting ethereal patterns across my ivory silk gown. Everything was perfect, too perfect perhaps. "You look absolutely radiant, sweetheart," my maid of honor, Jasmine, whispered as she fastened the delicate pearl buttons running down my dress. My grandmother's veil cascaded in layers of vintage lace that had witnessed 3 generations of brides before me. I caught my reflection in the antique mirror and barely recognized myself. The woman staring back looked like a princess. Her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon adorned with baby's breath and tiny white roses. "Nervous?" Jasmine asked, applying final touches to my lip gloss. "Terrified," I admitted with a laugh. But the good kind of terrified. Like standing at the edge of a cliff before you learn to fly. My phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. "Can't wait to marry you, beautiful. You're going to take my breath away." Oliver Blackwood. My college sweetheart, my best friend, my future. We'd been together 6 years, weathering his law school, celebrating his dream job, planning our future with careful precision. "The cars are here," announced my sister Luna. "You ready to become Mrs. Blackwood?" The ride to St. Margaret's Cathedral was a blur of well wishes and last-minute touch-ups. The Gothic church stood like a monument to love eternal, white roses and trailing ivy adorning every pew. As our limousine pulled up, I saw guests filing through the massive oak doors. Oliver's side was well represented. His father's business associates, his mother's garden club friends, countless relatives I'd met over 6 years. But Eleanor Blackwood caught my attention first. She stood at the church entrance like a queen holding court, resplendent in champagne-colored silk. Her silver hair was styled in perfect waves, real pearls the size of grapes catching the light. Even from distance, her expression wasn't warm or welcoming. It was calculating, like a chess player studying the board. "She looks intense today," Luna observed. "She's probably just emotional," I said, though something in my stomach twisted with warning. Eleanor had never embraced me. During our 6-year courtship, she'd been politely cordial at best, openly hostile at worst. Her comments always sounded supportive but carried undertones sharp enough to draw blood. How lovely that Oliver found someone so down to earth. "I'm sure you'll learn to fit in eventually. Wonderful that Oliver isn't shallow about appearances." Oliver always brushed off my concerns. "She loves you. She just has trouble expressing it. You make me happy, and that's what matters." As I stepped from the limousine, Eleanor's eyes found mine across the courtyard. Her mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something that made my blood run cold. Not disapproval, I could handle that. What I saw was triumph. The look of a woman who knew something I didn't. "Ophelia, sweetheart, you look stunning," she said, air-kissing my cheeks. Her expensive perfume wrapped around me like smoke. "Thank you, Eleanor. I do hope you're ready for today," she continued, her smile widening unnaturally. "It's going to be quite memorable." The way she emphasized memorable sent ice through my veins. The processional felt like floating through a dream. Every step down that rose-petal-strewn aisle brought me closer to the future I'd imagined for years. Guests rose as one, faces turned toward me with varying degrees of warmth. My side, smaller but genuine, beamed with unrestrained joy. College friends, colleagues, neighbors who'd become family. Oliver's side was more reserved but elegant, generations of Blackwood tradition filling those pews. Eleanor sat in the front row, posture military straight, hands folded precisely. She wasn't crying. Not even the graceful tears mothers of the groom were expected to shed. She watched me with hawk-like intensity. Halfway down the aisle, Oliver's expression shifted. His smile remained, but something flickered, confusion, concern. He was looking past me toward his mother, and whatever he saw made his jaw tighten. When I reached the altar, Oliver stepped forward to take my hand. His fingers were warm and steady. "You're breathtaking," he whispered. "I can't believe you're about to be my wife." Father Mackenzie smiled benevolently. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the joining of Oliver James Blackwood and Ophelia Rose Harper in holy matrimony." The traditional words washed over me like a benediction. This was the moment I'd dreamed of since childhood. If any person can show just cause why Oliver and Ophelia may not be joined together, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The silence stretched like a held breath. Father Mackenzie began to continue, moving toward the vows that would make us husband and wife. And that's when Eleanor Blackwood stood up. The sound of Eleanor rising was like a gunshot in the sacred silence. Every head turned, every breath held in growing alarm. She stood with commanding poise, champagne silk catching the stained glass light. "I'm sorry, Father," she said, her voice carrying clearly, "but I cannot hold my peace." The world tilted. Oliver's hand tightened around mine, his grip becoming painful. Father Mackenzie looked genuinely shocked. "Eleanor," Oliver warned, "please don't." But she wasn't looking at him. Her eyes fixed on me with laser intensity, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "I have remained silent for 6 long years," she continued, each word precisely enunciated, "watching my son make the greatest mistake of his life. But I cannot stand by and watch him bind himself to someone so clearly beneath him in every conceivable way." The collective gasp was like a physical force. My legs went weak, bouquet trembling in suddenly nerveless fingers. "Mother, stop," Oliver said louder, face flushing with anger. "Stop this right now." But Eleanor was just beginning, gleeful malice in her voice. "Ophelia Harper," she said, turning my name distasteful, "daughter of a small-town mechanic and part-time seamstress. God rest their souls. Raised in a trailer park, educated at community college before transferring on financial aid. Currently a middle school art teacher making $32,000 yearly." Each fact was delivered like a slap, designed to strip away every pretense of belonging. The worst part was none of it was untrue. But the way Eleanor said it, with such disdain, made my entire life sound shameful rather than a testament to hard work. "My son," she continued, voice rising theatrically, "is heir to the Blackwood fortune. Harvard Law School summa cum laude. Destined for greatness. Perhaps political office. And you want him tied to someone whose greatest accomplishment is teaching finger painting." I opened my mouth but no words came. Her cruelty had stolen my voice. Beside me, Oliver vibrated with fury but seemed equally frozen. "Furthermore," Eleanor continued, clearly enjoying herself, "I have it on good authority that Miss Harper has been hiding significant debts. Student loans, credit cards, money borrowed against her parents' life insurance. She is, quite literally, a gold digger." The lie hit like a physical blow. Yes, I had student loans, but I'd been completely honest with Oliver. The accusation about my parents' insurance was pure fabrication, designed to wound as deeply as possible. "Mother!" Oliver's voice cracked like a whip. "How dare you spread these lies?" "They're not lies, darling," Eleanor said with false sweetness. "I've hired a thorough private investigator. Designer shoes and handbags charged to credit cards she can't afford. Spa treatments costing more than her salary." Tears burned behind my eyes. Some was true. I had splurged occasionally, wanting to fit in Oliver's world. But Eleanor made me sound calculating rather than a woman trying to build a life with someone she loved. "You deserve better, Oliver," Eleanor continued, voice softening with fake concern. "A wife who brings something besides debt and desperation. Someone from our world who understands our values. Someone who won't embarrass you or drag down your reputation with her. Common background." The word common hung like a curse. Around us, guests sat stunned, some horrified, others fascinated by the unfolding drama. Father Mackenzie found his voice. Mrs. Blackwood, I must ask you to. I'm almost finished, father, she said coolly. Marriage is forever. Some mistakes can never be undone. She turned to Oliver, expression shifting to wounded motherly love. Please, darling. For me, for our family, for your future. Don't throw your life away on someone who will never be good enough, no matter how much you think you love her. The silence was deafening. I stood in my beautiful dress, grandmother's veil, borrowed pearls, feeling smaller and more exposed than ever. Every eye waited to see how I would respond to this public evisceration. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold my bouquet. Vision blurred with tears of humiliation and rage so profound it felt like dying. But then something deep inside shifted. The tears stopped. My hands steadied. When I looked at Eleanor Blackwood, cold clarity settled over me like armor. I had been silent long enough. The transformation was like nothing I'd experienced. Years of swallowing Eleanor's insults, of making myself smaller to fit their world, crystallized into something diamond-hard and unbreakable. Are you finished? I asked, my voice carrying surprisingly strong across the cathedral. Eleanor blinked, clearly not expecting me to respond at all. Because if you are, I continued, stepping away from Oliver to face her fully, I'd like to say something. The congregation leaned forward, sensing the real drama was beginning. First, let me address your facts about my background. Yes, my father was a mechanic. The best in our county. He could fix anything with honesty and integrity that earned everyone's respect. My mother was a seamstress whose work was so beautiful that brides came from 3 towns over for their dresses. I could see some guests nodding with approval. They worked multiple jobs not because they were failures, but because they were determined to give their daughters opportunities they never had. They saved every penny so Luna and I could attend college. They died with love in their hearts and knowledge they'd raised women who would make their own way through hard work. Eleanor's composure was beginning to crack. You speak of community college like it's shameful, I continued. I spent 2 years at Jefferson Community College not because I wasn't smart enough for university, but because it's what we could afford. I graduated valedictorian, earning me a full scholarship to state. As for my debts, yes, I have student loans. $43,000, which I've been paying steadily for 4 years. I'm not ashamed of owing money for education. I'm proud of it. It represents knowledge earned and dreams pursued. I stepped closer to Eleanor. Your private investigator was thorough but not accurate. Those designer items. 3 pairs of shoes and 2 handbags over 6 years for special occasions with your family. The spa treatments. Monthly massage for chronic back injury from a car accident. The salon visits. I color my own hair, Eleanor. The congregation was completely silent. But here's what your investigator couldn't quantify, I continued, voice rising with passion. The nights I stayed up until 3 a.m. grading papers because I care about my students' futures. The joy on a child's face creating their first real artwork. The food drives I organize yearly. Free tutoring for families who can't afford help, community art programs I've started, the scholarship fund in my parents' memory. I could see tears in guests' eyes now. You want to know what I bring to this marriage, Eleanor? I bring a heart full of love for your son. Loyalty, integrity, and strength from overcoming real obstacles. Knowledge that happiness isn't measured in trust funds, but in daily acts of kindness that make life worth living. Eleanor had gone pale beneath her makeup. Your son loves my stories about parents who showed affection through actions rather than bank accounts. He loves that I can change a tire, stretch a dollar, find joy in simple things like Sunday pancakes and kitchen dancing while doing dishes. I turned to Oliver, whose face showed pride, love, and something like awe. But most importantly, I love him for who he is, not what he has. I've never asked for money, never expected him to pay my bills, never seen him as anything but the man who makes me laugh, holds me when I cry, challenges me to be better daily. I faced Eleanor again, voice carrying 6 years of suppressed hurt. You've spent 6 years making clear you consider me inadequate. Snide comments about my clothes, education, family, career. You've excluded me from traditions, questioned my motives, dismissed my achievements, done everything possible to make me feel unwelcome. And now, my voice rising to fill every corner, on what should be the happiest day of my life, you've chosen to humiliate me with vicious attacks that say far more about your character than mine. The silence was profound. So let me be very clear, Eleanor Blackwood. Fire in my voice now. I am not beneath your son. I am not unworthy of his love. I am not a gold digger or social climber or any ugly thing you've implied. I am a woman who knows her worth, who earned every success through hard work, who treats people with respect regardless of bank balance. I believe love matters more than lineage. Kindness trumps connections. Integrity outweighs inheritance. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. If you can't see that, if you're so blinded by snobbery and prejudice that you destroy your son's happiness rather than welcome me, then I pity you. Because you're about to lose the most wonderful man in the world over narrow-minded bigotry. The cathedral was silent enough to hear whispered prayers 3 rows back. Eleanor stood frozen, mouth agape, having never been addressed so directly in her privileged life. Her social armor had cracked, revealing something almost vulnerable underneath. But Oliver's reaction held my attention most completely. He stared at me with an expression I'd never seen. Part admiration, part amazement, and something that looked like recognition. As if seeing me clearly for the first time, understanding who I'd always been beneath the careful politeness I'd maintained. "Ophelia," he said softly, voice carrying across the silent cathedral like confession. "I am so sorry." "Oliver, darling," Eleanor began. "You don't need to." "No, Mother." His sharpness made her stop mid-sentence. "I need to apologize to my fiancé for allowing this. For not stopping it immediately. For 6 years of letting you treat the woman I love with barely concealed contempt while telling myself it would improve." He turned to face Eleanor fully, and I saw the transformation. Boy seeking approval becoming man making his own choices. "Ophelia is right about everything," he said clearly. "Every accusation, every insinuation about her character, every attempt to diminish her worth. It says nothing about her and everything about you." Eleanor's face flushed, composure cracking further. "You want to discuss what someone brings to marriage? Let me tell you what Ophelia brings. Compassion, something our family needs more of. Genuine warmth in a world of social calculation. Love that doesn't come with conditions beyond simple human decency." He moved beside me, taking my hand. "She has never asked me to change, never expected me to abandon family or traditions. She's attended every function with grace despite being unwelcome. She's listened to my problems, supported my dreams, loved me through worst moments without making me feel indebted." Tears sprang to my eyes. Gratitude, love, overwhelming relief that he understood. "And you," he said, turning back to Eleanor with sadness and determination, "have shown everyone exactly what kind of person you are. Not the elegant lady you pretend to be, but someone so threatened by genuine goodness that you'd destroy it rather than admit error." The congregation was riveted. Several people wept openly. "Oliver, please," Eleanor said, voice smaller now. "I only want what's best for you. The life I deserve," Oliver repeated slowly, "is the one I choose. And I choose Ophelia. Her strength, integrity, capacity for love. I choose the woman who makes me want to be better, who sees the best in me when I don't see it myself." He squeezed my hand tighter. "But most of all, Mother, I choose to break the cycle of conditional love defining our family for generations. My children will never wonder if they're good enough to earn their parents' approval. They will know they're loved simply because they exist." The silence broke with someone beginning to clap. Oliver's Aunt Margaret, rising slowly, her applause echoing like benediction. One by one, other guests joined until sound filled the sacred space with something like absolution. Eleanor looked around at the applauding congregation with shock and dawning humiliation. This wasn't the support she'd expected. Instead, she'd exposed herself as the villain in her own drama. Father Mackenzie stepped forward, face kind but grave. Perhaps we should take a brief recess. No, Father. Oliver shook his head. If everyone's willing, I'd like to continue. I've waited long enough to marry the woman I love, and I won't let anyone delay it further. He turned to me, eyes bright with tears and absolute certainty. Ophelia Rose Harper, he said strongly, you are the strongest, most courageous woman I've ever known. What you just did took more bravery than I've shown my entire life. I love you not despite where you come from, but because of it. I love that you know hard work's value, that you treat everyone with kindness regardless of status, that you find joy in simple moments and beauty in ordinary things. The cathedral was silent again, but with reverence now. If you'll still have me, Oliver continued, if you can forgive me for not protecting you from this, if you can see a future with a man just learning to stand up to his own family, then I want to spend my life proving I deserve your love. Looking into Oliver's eyes, I saw everything I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago and so much more. The man he was becoming, willing to choose love over legacy, truth over tradition, courage over comfort. Oliver, I said steadily, there's nothing to forgive. You can't control others' actions. Only your response. And your response today has shown me exactly the kind of husband you'll be. I turned to Eleanor, who stood frozen, her world crumbling. Eleanor, I said without anger now, only sadness. I hoped someday we'd find common ground. I still hope that. Because despite everything, you're going to be my family. My children's grandmother. I believe love can change hearts that seem hardened beyond repair. But, my voice grew firmer, I will never again allow anyone to treat me as less than I am. I will never again smile when someone diminishes my worth. I am proud of who I am, where I come from, what I've accomplished. And I will teach my children to be proud of both sides of their heritage. I looked back at Oliver, heart overflowing. Yes, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Yes, I will marry you. Today, right now, in front of everyone here. Because what we have is stronger than cruelty, bigger than prejudice, more lasting than any attempt to tear it down. The applause was thunderous, echoing off vaulted ceilings like celebration orchestrated by angels. People stood, cheering, some laughing with relief and joy. Even Oliver's reserved relatives clapped with genuine enthusiasm. Eleanor had sunk back into her pew, face masked with defeat and dawning realization. She had gambled everything, believing her son would choose family loyalty over love. She had lost spectacularly, revealing her true nature to everyone who mattered. Father Mackenzie stepped forward, face radiant with something like divine approval. Well then, he said warmly, shall we proceed? I think we've witnessed something extraordinary. A testament to true love and genuine courage. Oliver took both my hands, thumbs brushing away fresh tears. But these were tears of joy now. Ophelia, he began, abandoning traditional vows for words from his heart, I promise to love you not just in good times, but especially in moments like this, when the world tries to tear us apart. I promise to stand beside you always, to defend you, honor you, never let anyone make you feel less than the incredible woman you are. I promise to be worthy of your strength, kindness, and forgiveness. I promise to build a life based on love, respect, and equality. I promise to be the husband who lifts you up rather than asking you to make yourself smaller. And I promise our children will grow up knowing love comes first. Before money, before status, before family expectations. His voice caught but continued with unwavering conviction. I choose you, Ophelia Harper. Every day for the rest of my life in every way that matters. You are my heart, my home, and my happiest ending. By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the cathedral. When my turn came, I looked at this man who had just proven himself worthy of every dream I'd dared dream. Oliver, I said clearly, 6 years ago, I fell in love with your kindness, humor, and generous heart. Today, I fell in love with your courage, integrity, and willingness to choose what's right over what's easy. I promise to love you through every challenge, every joy, Every ordinary Tuesday that makes up life together. I promise to be your partner in all things. Your biggest supporter, most honest critic, and safest place to fall. I promise to build a marriage based on truth, respect, and genuine partnership. I promise our home will be where love is unconditional, kindness is the highest currency, and everyone feels valued for who they are, not what they have. I squeezed his hands tighter. Most of all, I promise that no matter what storms we face, who tries to tear us down, what challenges life brings, I will stand with you. I choose you, Oliver Blackwood, not for what you can give me, but for who you are. Today, tomorrow, and all the tomorrows after. Father Mackenzie beamed at us both. By the power vested in me by God and the state, he said, and by witness of this congregation who has seen love triumph over adversity, I pronounce you husband and wife. Oliver, you may kiss your bride. The laughter rippling through congregation was warm and genuine. Oliver's hands cupped my face gently. "Hello, Mrs. Blackwood," he whispered. "Hello, Mr. Blackwood," I whispered back. "Ready for the adventure? With you. I'm ready for anything." When he kissed me, it felt like coming home and starting a journey simultaneously. It tasted of promises kept and futures bright with possibility. The congregation erupted in applause, and I swear I heard my parents' voices among them. "Ladies and gentlemen," Father Mackenzie announced with pleasure, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Oliver Blackwood." The country club reception had been transformed into fairy tale elegance. White roses, trailing ivy, crystal chandeliers casting warm, magical light. But walking into the ballroom hand in hand, I knew no decoration could compete with the drama we'd just lived through. Guests buzzed with excitement, voices creating palpable energy. Some still processed what they'd witnessed. Others were energized by being present for such extraordinary moments. "Ophelia, darling." Oliver's Aunt Margaret appeared immediately, eyes bright with barely contained glee. "That was absolutely magnificent. In 40 years of society weddings, I have never seen anything so beautifully executed. You've given us something to talk about for years." "I wasn't trying to create spectacle," I said, still overwhelmed. "Oh, dear girl," Margaret laughed. "You weren't creating anything. You were being yourself. Authentically, courageously, magnificently yourself. Exactly what this family needed to see." She leaned closer conspiratorially. "Between you and me, Eleanor has been queen bee too long. Someone needed to remind her that breeding and bank accounts don't automatically confer character. You did it with such grace that even she couldn't argue." As if summoned, Eleanor appeared in the doorway. She had clearly composed herself. Makeup refreshed, hair perfect, expression carefully neutral. But something was different about her carriage, less imperious than usual. The room didn't fall silent, but energy shifted. Conversations became quieter, more watchful. Everyone wondered what would happen next in this exceeded all expectations family drama. Eleanor's eyes swept the room until finding Oliver and me. Our gazes locked across elegant space, and I braced for round two. But instead of approaching with more venom, she moved to the bar and ordered what looked like a very large wine. For the next hour, we were surrounded by congratulations from friends and relatives, people wanting to tell us how moved they'd been, to assure us we'd handled an impossible situation with remarkable dignity. "I've never been so inspired by a wedding," said my college friend Rebecca, tears still shimmering. "The way you stood up for yourself, for your love, for everything you believe. It was like watching someone discover superpowers." "It didn't feel powerful," I admitted. "It felt terrifying." "That's what made it brave," Oliver's young cousin James chimed in, looking at me with awe. "I've watched grandmother Eleanor intimidate people my whole life. No one has ever stood up to her like that. You defended all of us who've ever felt not good enough for her standards." Our wedding planner called for attention. Oliver and I exchanged glances. We hadn't planned speeches beyond traditional thanks, but after everything, it felt important to acknowledge what had happened. Oliver took the microphone first. "Ophelia and I want to thank you for witnessing what was certainly more eventful than any of us expected," he began, earning nervous laughter. What happened today was unprecedented, yes, but also illuminating. It showed us who we really are, both as individuals and as a couple. It showed us the difference between people who love conditionally and people who love with their whole hearts. He looked directly at Eleanor, sitting at a corner table with old friends, wine glass nearly empty. It reminded us that family isn't just about blood or shared names or inherited wealth. Family is about people who stand with you when things get difficult, who celebrate your victories, who love you not for what you can give but for who you are. He handed me the microphone, and I felt that crystalline clarity settle over me again. Today taught me something important, I said clearly. I've spent 6 years trying to earn acceptance from people who had already decided I wasn't worthy. I've changed my clothes, vocabulary, even hobbies, trying to fit into a world that kept telling me I didn't belong. But today I learned, I do belong. Not because I've earned the right through external validation, but because the man I love chose me. Because friends surrounding us chose to celebrate with us. Because love doesn't require pedigree or portfolio. Just two people willing to build something beautiful together. I could see several people wiping their eyes. So to everyone who stood with us today, literally and figuratively, thank you. To those still deciding where they stand, the door is always open. And to those who may never accept our union, we respect your right to your feelings, but won't let them define our happiness. Now, I concluded with genuine joy, let's celebrate love, resilience, and the beautiful life Oliver and I are going to build together. The applause was warm and sustained. Even some of Eleanor's table were clapping, though Eleanor herself remained motionless, staring into her wine glass. Dinner was surprisingly joyful. Earlier drama seemed to have cleared the air rather than poisoning it, and conversations flowed more freely than at typical formal receptions. People seemed more authentic, willing to let guards down and actually connect. As evening progressed, I noticed Eleanor getting up and walking out to the terrace overlooking meticulously maintained gardens. She stood alone at the railing, silhouette outlined against soft ground lights. "Go," Oliver said quietly, having noticed the same thing. "Talk to her. Are you sure? She's my mother, Ophelia. Despite everything, she's still my mother. And you have the biggest heart of anyone I know. If anyone can bridge this gap, it's you." I kissed his cheek and made my way to the terrace, heels clicking softly against stone pavers. Eleanor didn't turn when I approached, but her shoulders tensed. "Beautiful evening," I said quietly, standing beside her. "Yes," she replied barely above a whisper. "It is." We stood in silence for several minutes, soft sounds of laughter drifting from the ballroom. Finally Eleanor spoke. "I have never been spoken to the way you spoke to me today." "I'm sorry it had to happen in front of everyone," I replied honestly. "I would have preferred that conversation privately, but you didn't give me that option." She nodded slowly. "No, I didn't." Another pause. Then she turned to look at me for the first time since we'd been alone. "You were right," she said, words seeming to cost considerable effort. "About almost everything you said. I have treated you poorly. I have been cruel and dismissive and prejudiced." I waited, sensing there was more. "I told myself I was protecting Oliver," she continued, voice growing stronger. "I told myself you were wrong for him, that you would hold him back, that you didn't understand our world. But the truth is..." He paused, struggling. "The truth is, I was terrified. Terrified you would take him away from me, that he would choose you over his family, that I would lose the most important relationship in my life." "Eleanor," I said gently, "I never wanted to take Oliver away from you. I wanted to join your family, not replace it." "I know that now," she said, tears forming. "I can see it in how you've handled everything. Even today, after what I put you through, you're out here trying to make peace. You're not vindictive or manipulative or any of the things I convinced myself you were." She wiped her eyes carefully, trying not to disturb makeup. "What you said in there about family being people who stand with you, you're right. When you needed family most, I was attacking you while strangers defended you. That tells me everything I need to know about who I've become." I felt my heart softening despite everything. Eleanor, you're not a bad person. You're a mother who loves her son and was afraid of losing him. I understand that fear. Would you? She asked hopefully. Would you really? Of course. Love makes us protective, sometimes to the point of terrible choices. The question is what we do once we realize we've made those choices. She straightened her shoulders with something of her old authority. I want to apologize, she said formally. Publicly. In front of everyone. I want to acknowledge I was wrong about you, that my behavior was inexcusable, and that I would like the chance to start over if you're willing. The offer surprised me. This was Eleanor Blackwood, a woman who probably hadn't apologized for anything in decades, offering to humble herself before the same people who'd witnessed her earlier humiliation. You don't have to do it publicly, I said. A private apology would be enough. No, she said firmly. I made my accusations public. My apology should be public too. It's the right thing to do. I studied her face in the soft light, looking for any sign of manipulation. But all I saw was a woman forced to confront uncomfortable truths about herself, trying to find a way forward. All right, I said finally. If that's what you want. She nodded, then hesitated. Ophelia. May I ask you something? Of course. Do you think there's a chance we could eventually be friends? Real friends, not just polite strangers related by marriage. The question was so vulnerable, so unlike the imperious woman who'd tried to destroy my wedding, that tears sprang to my eyes. I'd like that very much, I said honestly. I've always wanted a mother-in-law who could also be a friend. Something shifted in her expression. Relief, perhaps the first glimmer of genuine affection. Then let's go back inside, she said, and I'll do what I should have done 6 years ago. Welcome you to the family properly. The christening of Elizabeth Rose Blackwood was everything our wedding hadn't been. Peaceful, joyful, filled with family harmony I'd once thought impossible. Eleanor, resplendent in soft blue silk and holding her granddaughter with reverent care, smiled at me across the same cathedral where we'd been married 13 months earlier. She's beautiful, Eleanor whispered as little Elizabeth gurgled contentedly. She has your eyes and Oliver's stubborn chin. And hopefully your fierce determination, I replied, watching tiny fingers wrap around her grandmother's pearl necklace. The relationship between Eleanor and me hadn't transformed overnight. It took months of careful conversations, shared lunches, gradual trust building. But when I went into labor 3 weeks early, Eleanor sat beside Oliver in the hospital waiting room, her perfectly manicured hand gripping his as they waited for news. When Elizabeth was born, Eleanor cried. Really cried, not delicate social tears but deep, overwhelming emotion of a grandmother falling in love. She had kept her terrace promise. Her public apology at our reception was genuine, heartfelt, and complete. She acknowledged her prejudice, cruelty, and mistakes without reservation or excuse. More importantly, she followed up with actions. Hosting dinner parties to introduce me properly to extended family, making substantial donations to my parents' memorial scholarship fund, and treating me with the respect and affection I'd always hoped for. You know, she said now, watching Oliver juggle godfather duties while being the proudest new father in the cathedral, I've been thinking about something you said at your wedding. What's that? You said you believed love could change hearts that seemed hardened beyond repair. I thought you were naive then. I thought some people were too set in their ways. She looked down at Elizabeth, expression soft with wonder. But you were right. Love did change my heart. Your love for my son, your patience with me despite my behavior. And now this little angel who's made me understand what really matters. I felt grateful tears sting my eyes. Elizabeth is lucky to have you as grandmother, I said. All your sophistication and refinement, but also wisdom that comes from learning to choose love over fear. And she's lucky to have you as mother, Eleanor replied. Someone who will teach her to be strong, to stand up for herself, to never let anyone make her feel less than she is. As if understanding our conversation, Elizabeth opened her eyes and looked directly at me. At 6 weeks old, she was already alert and curious, studying the world with the intensity of someone who had important things to learn. "What do you think she'll be when she grows up?" Eleanor asked. I looked at my daughter, this perfect combination of everything Oliver and I had brought to our marriage. His intelligence and kindness, my determination and resilience, and something entirely her own just beginning to emerge. "Strong," I said finally. "Kind. Brave enough to speak truth to power when necessary, but wise enough to choose grace over vengeance. A woman who knows her worth and doesn't accept less than she deserves." "In other words," Eleanor said with a smile holding no trace of old condescension, "exactly like her mother." As we prepared to leave the cathedral, I caught sight of the pew where Eleanor had made her stand 13 months earlier. The memory no longer held power to hurt me. Instead, it reminded me how far we'd all come, how much we'd grown, and how the most devastating moments can sometimes become catalysts for the most beautiful transformations. Oliver appeared at my side, face glowing with happiness and pride. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Blackwood?" he asked. The same question from a year ago, but with so much more meaning now. I looked at my husband, my daughter, and the mother-in-law who'd become one of my dearest friends and allies. I thought about the life we'd built together. Not perfect, but real and honest and filled with love that grows stronger when tested. "Yes," I said, taking his hand as we walked toward our future. "I'm ready." Outside the cathedral, June sunshine felt like blessing, warm and golden and full of promise. Elizabeth slept peacefully in her christening gown. The same gown worn by 3 generations of Blackwood babies, now honored to dress this child who represented the best of both worlds. As we posed for pictures on cathedral steps, I remembered the woman I'd been on my wedding day. Nervous, hopeful, still trying to prove she belonged. That woman had found her voice in this sacred space, discovered strength she didn't know she possessed, and learned that sometimes the most important battles are fought for love. Looking at my family now. My chosen family, my earned family, my beautifully imperfect but absolutely authentic family. I knew every struggle had been worth it. Love had indeed conquered all, not through fairy tale magic but through the much more powerful force of people choosing to grow, to forgive, and to build something beautiful from broken pieces of their fears. And as we walked toward our car, toward home, toward whatever challenges and joys awaited us, I carried the most important lesson. That we teach people how to treat us not just through what we accept, but through what we refuse to accept. And sometimes, in refusing to be diminished, we don't just save ourselves. We save everyone around us who needed to see that choosing courage over comfort, authenticity over approval, and love over everything else was possible. The story that began with betrayal had become one of redemption. The wedding day that started as nightmare had become the foundation of dreams come true. And Elizabeth Rose Blackwood, sleeping peacefully in her father's arms as we drove home through golden afternoon light, would grow up knowing she came from a love story. Messy and complicated and absolutely real. Where happily ever after was earned through strength, grace, and the unshakable belief that love, real love, is always worth fighting for. Thank you for watching today's video. If you want more videos like this, please like the video and hit the subscribe button. It helps us in making more of these contents and building this amazing community. Thank you.